Good afternoon. Welcome to BTV News, and thank you for tuning in with us this lovely afternoon. I'm your host, Eduardo Nieto, accompanied by our trusty news team, Aldair Hernandez, Alejandra Thomas, and Alejandro Reyes. In today's program, we'll talk about the civil rights movement in commemoration of all those inspirational leaders from different levels of society that fought for equality and justice. Let's get right into the news. First up, Alex Reyes will tell us about the Brown versus Board of Education incident. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Valdo. Separate but equal. Definitely, the Brown versus the Board of Education changed the USA history forever, because it was one of the cornerstones of the civil rights movement, and it also helped establish the precedent that the doctrine, separate but equal, was in fact not equal at all. This doctrine was a way of promoting segregation in the USA, and it was a legal doctrine in the USA constitutional law, according to which racial segregation did not necessarily violate the 14th Amendment to the USA Constitution, which guaranteed equal protection under the law to all people. But what was the Brown versus the Board of Education about? Well, the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, it was a landmark 1954 Supreme Court, in which the justice ruled anonymously that racial segregation of children in public schools was something unconstitutional. When Brown's case and other 4 cases related to school segregation first came before the Supreme Court in 1952, the court combined them into a single case under the name Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. And as I said before, this completely changed the USA history forever.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now let's continue on with our next topic, presented by your experienced investigator, Alejandra Thomas.
Thanks very much, Eduardo. Now I should talk about Rosa Parks. She was born on February the 4th of 1913 in Tuskegee, Alabama, and she studied at the Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes, but she was forced to drop out after her grandmother fell ill. During her childhood and adolescence, Parks frequently faced racial discrimination and violence because of her roots and skin color. So from a very young age, she became an activist on the civil rights movement. On December the 1st, James Blake, the driver of the bus she was riding in, asked her and 3 other people to get up, and the others obeyed, but she refused, for which she was arrested. As a consequence of this, a boycott was carried out against the Montgomery buses, supported by Martin Luther King Jr. The demands they made on the boycotts were simple. Black passengers were to be treated with courtesy. Seats were to be assigned on a first-come, first-served basis, with white Americans sitting front to back, and black passengers sitting back to front. American drivers must drive routes that are primarily African American. On 1966, the Supreme Court voted to end segregated buses, and later, religious and political leaders formed the Montgomery Improvement Association. Finally, on October 24th of 2005, at the age of 92, she died of natural causes. Today, Ning continues to be a brave runner of the fight against racism and discrimination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that valuable information, Alejandra. Now, before we continue on with our next segment, I would like to talk about the case of Emmett Till, a defenseless 14-year-old boy who was murdered in the state of Mississippi at the hands of Roy Bryant and Jay Millen, which has generated nationwide attention to racial violence and injustice for African Americans. During the night of August 28, 1955, Emmett's assailants entered in his great-uncle's home and took him without any problem. However, 2 of Till's cousins witnessed the poor boy's kidnapping, but couldn't do anything to prevent it. Afterwards, Moses Wright explained to the authorities that 4 days before the incident, Emmett and his cousins went to a country store where he tried to flirt with a woman by the name of Carolyn Bryant by whistling at her inside the family store. Therefore, her husband and brother got enraged by Emmett's inappropriate actions, thus leading to his kidnapping later on. Days later, Emmett Till's body was found at the Tallahatchie River with several signs of torture throughout his body, leaving him totally unrecognizable. Weeks later, Roy and Millam went on trial in a segregated courthouse on September 23rd. The 12-person jury deliberated for less than an hour before issuing a verdict of non-guilty, explaining that they believed the state had failed to prove the identity of the body. This atrocious act outraged many people around the country by the unjust decision, and also by the state's decision not to indict both killers on the separate charge of kidnapping. Finally, after many years of injustice, Carolyn Bryant confessed in an interview that the accusations she had stated were fake and made up to protect their family reputation. Therefore, in July of 2018, the government announced that the case would be reopened after receiving new information and evidence. Well, after that terrible story, let's hope that justice is served to honor Emmett Till's unfortunate fate. To end today's program, Aldair Hernandez will tell us about the Little Rock crisis. Go ahead, Aldair.
Oh, sure. The Little Rock Nine were a group of 9 black students who challenged racial segregation in the public schools of Little Rock, Arkansas. The group consisted of Melba Patillo, Ernest Pint, Elizabeth Eckford, Minnie Jane Brown, Terence Roberts, Carlotta Walsh, Jefferson Thomas, Gloria Ray, and Thelma Mothership, and it became the center of the struggle to desegregate public schools in the United States, specifically in the South. During the summer of 1957, the Little Rock Nine enrolled at Little Rock Central High School, which until then had been all white, but after the verdict in the Brown v. Board of Education trial, they had all the right to present themselves at school. However, on the first day of classes in the Central High, Governor Fauvas called in the Arkansas National Guard to block the black students' entry into the high school. And later that month, President Dwight D. Eisenhower sent in federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine into the school. It drew national attention to the civil rights movement, as the support and intervention of the president himself meant that they also had the support of him. Sadly, although several of the black students had a great positive experience on the first day of school, they experienced routine harassment and even violence throughout the rest of the year. That's all from my part.
Thank you, Aldair. It's amazing how a small spark of hope can inspire many people. Now, finally, to end today's program, I want to thank all of our investigators and, of course, to the viewers who share their time learning and applying their knowledge earned from today's program. That is it from our part. Have an incredible day and remember to stay curious.